The broadcast is
And
live.
it says we are live. We're hoping it's working. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the first inaugural discussion between official Eden Chief delegates and the Eos Network Foundation via E. LaRose. And I'm hearing myself.
One of you has speakers. One of you needs to mute themselves.
The first inaugural.
It's the infinite loop.
Yeah,
Did we solve it?
I think it was Han and he muted himself, so it's fine.
Yeah, I see Luca has headphones. Dan has headphones. So it's either you, Chris, or Han.
I'm muting myself.
It's fine. Let's just go.
I suppose we should figure this out in the beginning, though, before we get into the discussion very much. And so we're live. So yeah, welcome everybody. Hello, and thanks for joining us. Great to be here.
And now Chris is muted.
I've muted myself. I have headphones in case I was but I'm still hearing it. So
I don't hear it.
I don't
I don't hear it.
Also, it's just me. So I'm messing myself up. I will talk
maybe
over
because you
my
have
own
YouTube.
duplicate voice. I have too many tabs open. That's part of the problem here. So I can't find the one that's speaking to me twice. So anyway, let's do some intros while I sort this out so I can understand what I'm hearing. And Dan, do you want to do a quick intro as we kick this off?
Sure, sounds great. Thank you, Chris. So I'm Dan Singjoy. I was I was elected as chief delegate along with Chris and Han and Luca, and I'm honored to be here. I'm very appreciative of the Eden community, the EOS community. I've been a long-term EOS community member and Eden community member since basically the beginning of both these organizations. I've been following very closely, and I'm super excited about all the great things that we're doing with Eden. I'm a musician, and I'm a creator and entrepreneur, and I'm working to make the best experiences possible. And in this Eden election, I ran primarily to help support the Eden Fractal. The Eden Fractal is a new DAO. It's a new group that I've been doing with the Eden community. It's a new weekly meeting where we've been meeting every week, and we've been using the Fractal process or the Eden Fractal process to reward Eden contributors with Eden and EOS and NFTs. Eden Respect and EOS and NFTs. And it's been amazing. We've been meeting for 5 weeks so far, and we're meeting every Wednesdays at 13 UTC. Everyone's welcome to attend. And then I also help support Jesse's proposal too. Jesse from the EOSBs, who's planning to start a networking event at the beginning at Eden Fractal meetings for people who are interested in crypto and people who just want to network. And he's also planning to start an Eden marketing fractal. So I'm planning to help support Jesse's proposal very much because I'm very excited about it. And yeah, I'm super excited about empowering the Eden community and the ES community with this amazing consensus process that we have with Eden and Fractally. And there's so much more I could say, but I'll just leave it at that for now, I suppose. And of course, thank you, Helios, for hosting this too. Thank you so much, Chris, for bringing this all together. And thank you, Eve, for being here too. Really appreciate all your work, and Han and Luca.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. And I did solve I had so many tabs plus another like Chrome and Firefox. So it was like, anyway, here we go. So apologies for my confusion. Han, why don't you go next?
All right. My name is Han Ryu. I've been engaging with the youth community from the very beginning as a blog producer called Note One. So many of the old school community member might know me, although I'm not very vocal in the community. I've been focusing on my endeavor for the long time has been, Korean token holders' voice more reflected in the governance. So and I think the whole crypto industry is heading toward more democratic way with all the innovations with the soulbound token and all the proof of personhood and everything. And I think Eden and Fractal has so much resonance with where this whole industry is heading toward. And I'm, me being elected in the third term of Eden in this Eden election, I'm very excited to participate in what's happening because EOS community as a whole has lots of momentum building on toward September, October timeframe with the EVM and everything. And it's my honor to work with Luca and Dan and Chris, and then I have so much respect with all what you guys have been doing so far. And of course, Eve has been tremendous, leadership throughout, from the beginning. So I'm very glad to be here, and I thank you, all of you, for embark on this great starting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Han. And Luca.
Yeah, hi, I'm Luka Batic from Slovenia. I have like a team that is working on Eos for quite a lot of time now. We're working on port, was integrated in Pomelo and so on. I'm kind of joining Eden, and I'm seeing Eden as a way to uniquely distribute the funds. So to find unique ways, unique people to do it. So from my perspective, I'm kind of trying to achieve that Eden stays that way, so that the consensus stays split, so that people basically do the best that they can without kind of losing too much time trying to find like global consensus. So I'm kind of trying to just make onboarding easier from technical side. So for instance, the things that I choose for these 3 months is I want to do the Telegram bot that will basically first help reminding people that they are still not registered and that there are elections coming up. Second, the bot can make them like groups that they can just join in, coordinate, and just jump on the group call, click record, and then the video is just waiting for them on safe folder. So it's very easy on the users. And also would like to see so the induction ceremony, basically the video part removed, not the witness part, but the video part removed, because the real check happens on the first election anyway. So it, in my opinion, it just adds friction, and Eden can always use more users, and that will help as well. And yeah, I'm happy to work with everybody here. You guys are great, and also thank you for the voters and to select us, of course.
Right.
We will represent you well.
We need to thank those who put us here. That is what politicians are to do.
Yeah.
So I'm Chris Barnes. I'm a project manager at Helios, and been involved with Eden since the very beginning, when it was just an idea from Dan, and he was doing AMAs, and I was making notes. That was my sort of big break into the community as a note maker. Worked out. So yeah, for this season, I'm excited to try to drive users. So in line with what Luke is saying, how do we increase the membership participation, reduce apathy? And through those, I think what should be objective measurements, objective KPI for membership count is the easiest one. This is where we can demonstrate value to the network and the ecosystem. And it just brings in new users. Like we need, this is one of the, blockchains are often measured by their users, and Eden is a great unique application that runs on EOS. And so we need to bring in users to use Eden, let them become a part of the broader EOS ecosystem. So I think that's my primary focus. It starts with the website. How do we, what are the, when we get one opportunity at a first impression, and as things really ramp up for EOS in the coming few months, there's going to be a lot of new, fresh eyeballs. And we want Eden to be one of the things that they look at. And when they do look at Eden, they're impressed with what they see, and they want to join and participate. And that's, it also becomes just a method to retain potential new users. So maybe they see an app on EOS that they're not interested in, but governance is something they're into, or just, again, why join Eden? We need to answer that question and make it really compelling. So that's what I want to really focus on for the next 3 months. So from there, we could go into the sort of scripted questions, and I think it kind of feeds off of what our individual plans are, and we'll kind of give it to Eve to provide some feedback. And the first question we had was, what would Eve or the ENF, recognizing that Eve is a representative of the ENF, an important figure, of course, like to see from Eden over the next 3 months?
Just for clarity, is that a question that are the questions that each of you designed, or is that coming from one individual?
I crafted these questions. Yeah, we try to make this happen really quick. So this is something, the first election finished yesterday. And
we
it was
agree
like,
with the questions, so they are the right ones.
Were these consensus achieved
Yeah,
questions?
yeah,
3
of
out of
course.
4 voted for these
Global
questions.
consensus, not the split one. So
All right. Thank you very much for having me on. It's long overdue that we do this. I've been inviting Eden now for 13 months, 12 months to do these. So it only took about 12, 13 months to get here today. And so I think that that's the first thing that I'd like to see is, and I've been repeating this over and over, whoever gets selected as the chief delegates, in my view, has somewhat of a mandate given by the people who participated in the process to move the process along and to move that community along. So there's definitely, from my point of view, a leadership role that comes with being a chief delegate. And what I'd like to see from those leaders is more discipline, way more discipline, more organization, uh, less talking, more doing. And a big part of what I'd like to see from Eden is less so what the result of what you do is, but reiterating the process more frequently. So to me, Eden is a process to select individuals, or a process to select, and it goes along a little bit with what Luca said, what you do with it. So whether it's a process to select individuals to deploy funding, or to talk about ideas, or to whatever, the or to doesn't really matter as much. That process is what I'd like to see iterated more frequently and be used more so. So you have, or you're sitting on a process, and to me, I haven't seen that process be used very much. So I've seen it be used to create a group, but then that group afterwards hasn't really leveraged that process very much. And so that's the big thing that I'd like to see over the next 3 months, is that process be iterated upon, that process being developed, being maintained, because that's a big part of what we're missing too as well. In my opinion, Eden isn't at a stage where it's self-sufficient. And so it really isn't, it doesn't exist yet, or it isn't yet. It's still very much alpha. And so I think there's a big focus that needs to be placed on that for Eden to be independent in the future.
great answer. Any follow-up, any comments from fellows there on that response? Making sense?
Yeah. I have a comment, and thank you for sharing this perspective, Eve. It's very interesting to hear your thoughts, and I very much agree. I'd be curious to hear what you think about the Eden Fractal that we've been doing, meeting every week with the process. We've been doing it for the past 5 weeks, and we've had probably approximately 20 Eden members meeting every week. And I've also been really enthusiastically advocating for doing the process more often. And I think that this process, we can do it not just once every 6 months, not just every 3 months, not just once every week, but we can have multiple meetings every week and for all sorts of purposes. So I think that doing it weekly and doing it more often is super helpful. And I'd be interested to hear if you've been following what you've been doing with the Eden Fractal, and if you have thoughts about that, and if that fits with your vision of doing the process more often.
So I've joined on 2 occasions those Eden Fractally processes. What I see in those meetings, with the ones that I've joined anyways, is very similar to what I've seen with Eden General. It's a lot of talking and very little doing afterwards with the talking. So it's the same, very similar type of answer. Leveraging the process is important, but then deploying that, or putting that into action and getting something done with it, regardless of what that thing is. So not placing judgment on the result, not placing judgment on what is the outcome of. So it doesn't matter necessarily what it is, but having something be done with it, I think, is still what's missing. And so there's a lot of talking and very little doing. And so we find ourselves 12, 13 months in Eden with having, in my point of view, very little achieved. And I see that the weekly meetings that you're doing as well, there's a lot of talking, very little doing. So that's the one thing I would place more focus on, especially at these early stages where frequent iteration and deployment of ideas and of results is important. That's still lacking.
Great, thank you, Eve. Just to provide a bit of clarity and a quick follow-up. So there is a difference between the Eden fractal and the Genesis fractal. So
Gotcha.
the
Okay,
Genesis
so I
fractal,
have not then joined the other one.
yes, and it'd be great to see you there. And of course, you're invited. It'd be awesome. So the Genesis fractally is specifically to grow fractal governance and to grow fractal. That meets every Saturday. We started doing Eden fractal specifically for Eden and Eos every Wednesday. And there have been quite a few really substantial results. I would love to share a presentation that I shared during the Eden election yesterday. I was inspired by Dario from Eos Support. He was writing that it'd be great to see if there was a summary of what the Eden Fractal has done. And just to throw out a few real quick, we built tools, smart contracts for automating the distribution of the respect and EOS every week. And we also have an interface built, and there's also lots of great video content and so forth. So I won't go on about too much here, but I'd love to share more about that at some point. And I think that it has made some substantial progress, and we just need to share the story more.
So does it take the EOS that the members in Eden are obtaining through this process and then redistributing them through the sub process?
Yes, pretty much, and also using Pomelo too. So EOS, as we know, has amazing public good funding sources. I think probably better than any other community in the world. And so, to start it for the first 5 weeks, I sponsored 500 EOS that I raised with the organization that I'm building called Eden Creators, that I raised from Eden on EOS as a delegate in the last Eden term, and also from Pomelo. And so we were distributing 100 EOS a week with this process, and then Patrick from Nova Crypto did the same with 500 EOS, and then we're planning to do it more so in the future as well. And there's also a funding platform of probably like, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 10 people during the Eden election, because lots of people are very excited about this process.
So it's similar to what Luca was saying earlier, where EOS or the process is being used to determine where funds are to be deployed.
Yes, that's correct. So right now the funding is relatively small, but we could do it with a larger amount of funding. And yep, the process, it's a credibly neutral way where people show up to the meetings, and then depending on how they get ranked between, or how their contributions get ranked between 1 and 6, then they receive more or less both EOS and then the Eden Respect as well.
Awesome. Okay. Well, let's move on to another piece of I think an important topic, which is how does Eden provide value, right? This idea of what is value, how do we define value? It becomes very elusive if we add a lot of subjective value. I've spoken during my pitch about we need actual measurable metrics, KPI, something we can actually point to that's not subjective. Dominic, in a previous discussion, pointed out the importance of that. If we have really quality, objective, and KPI, they almost determine what the mission of the organization is, because it's now predicated around achieving those KPI, which is an interesting concept. So the question, Eve, is, in your view, how can Eden provide the most value to the EOS network?
That's a good question, because I don't think there's an answer necessarily to that. I've been very public and vocal about this, that what Eden, or the way that I see Eden, again, is this process. And what this process yields is what I'm interested in seeing, and how this process iterates is what I'm interested in seeing. So I would flip this question around and ask each of you, now that you're newly elected CDs, where do you think Eden, or how do you think Eden could create more value for the EOS network? Because that will be a key determining factor as to, in my opinion, the success of this particular cohort.
Okay, good. Yeah, let's... Luca or Han, do you want to go and give some thoughts on what you think, Han?
One of my thinking at the moment, actually, there's a lot, many people sees different things from Eden. And actually, there's still, many people are trying to figure out what Eden is eventually. What does it serve for? Is it only a fund allocation system, or is it a way to elect a representative? Then for what? And, is it still in a phase where it has to define its role in the ecosystem? And one of the things that I thought to myself was that, throughout the EOS history in the beginning, in the history of the EOS governance, with the referendum, with the initial constitution, there weren't many tokens participated in the actual governance. So actually, the vote turnout was way less than the quorum. So to make the referendum ratified, it has to pass 15%, but then the actual participation turned out only like 2 to 3%. And then, with Eden, I think many people here who participate in the process is willing to voice their opinion, even risking to reveal their faces. So I think there's lots of integrity. So I think what Eden can do much more than, as a tool for fund allocation is that to feedback where, to provide a feedback on where ENF has to go. For example, like ENF has a advisory board, and then Eden can be part of it. And I think, Eve just mentioned about Eden has to focus more on achieving things and more on doing, less talk. And I think, I personally believe that, to achieve something, to make something happen, or to build something, I think too much decentralization comes with lots of limitation. So I think those representatives, provide feedback on where the chain has to go. That kind of thing could be one of the potential what Eden can achieve in terms of the broader context of the whole EOS ecosystem.
Okay.
Just yeah.
Of course. Yeah, no, this is, I mean, there is no right answer, as Eve pointed out. There is no correct answer to this. These are all just potentialities. And it's only through discussion do we not only express and share these ideas, but then actually make them happen. So, of course, we need to do, but you don't do if you don't know what you're going to do. And that starts with talk. So we got to find this balance of discussion mixed with action. Luca, do you have any thoughts?
Yes. So let me just repeat the question. The question is about what value can Eden provide to EOS, basically, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. How do we provide the most value to the network?
So in my mind, basically the point of split consensus is that we try to do as much as possible without wasting too much time trying to get this consensus that we need to agree about everything. We would just not. Let's just split our roles. That's my thing. And also, but that being said, the issue there is that, let's say, the EOS token holders, they don't, since everything is split, they don't see the results. Even if there are the results, they will not see the one big thing being done or something like that. So the issue then becomes, how do we present this? I think we need like a spending explorer, and it needs to be like a simple way to present to public that where the money went. And it's not necessarily very important for each item, but it's important to show that money does get split and does get split into various unique ways. That's one, and then the people can just click on some bigger items, and then can check. Okay, they can see right. It then helps support this project, help build it up. So I think this presentation to the public is very important. It's missing right now because we have split. We basically don't even understand if, let's say, CDs really, if they even use their money. Did they use it? I don't know. I didn't check. And even if they used it, did they use them on themselves, only on themselves, or did they like really, I don't know, give like 90% to some project? Can we check this project? Just something simple to click on, something simple to present to the public. I think we are really missing that part. So we can kind of convince the public that that Eden itself is worth it at the end as a process.
Nice. Yeah. Fortunately, Edgar, head chief from the last round, is working on something close to that, where it's basically as Eden members withdraw their funds, they can add a memo, a category, they can categorize the disbursements that they receive as they receive them. So that's a step in the right direction where you'd have this explorer. Is it granular enough? Is it going to be maybe there's more that could be put there? But certainly, I think the team is willing to iterate. So I think
I'm not sure the public has time to be extremely granular. I don't think it's about that. It's more about the whole picture. At least,
Right.
yeah.
Well, okay, so yeah, then my answer, I think I fully agree with that. I think that's part of we need to be. It's transparency in the end, right? That's one of the things that DAOs are successful is if they're transparent. There's many examples right now we can see of these quote unquote decentralized networks that have 80% centralization in VCs. What? I didn't know about that. I mean, it was kind of there, but was it really? So there's an opportunity for us to be extremely transparent with our use of funds. So for me, the value is what I mentioned earlier, users. I think in the next 3 months, I'd like to see us create an image, a brand, something that's recognizable, that's compelling, draw in new users. It's a KPI that we can measure. We know the user count today. We know the participation of the past 3 official elections. That's something that we can objectively look at and then see what's the next election look like. So that's adding value. I think that's one really clear way. And then maybe part of this website that we iterate, because there are websites, they're just not being maintained. And it's because we've been too decentralized. Who's doing it? Are they being compensated to do it? Who has authority over the copy that's on these websites? And we had a central team running things via the Clarion and Fractal team, and we don't anymore. So this is like an emergent moment where we get to kind of chart our own destiny. And I think the 4 of us can do that as the duly elected representatives of this organization, of the people in this organization. So maybe part of that website is exactly what you're saying, Luca, is through there. There's a place that someone can click. It's really easy. It doesn't take a lot of work, and they get a snapshot of where the funds are going. And that can perhaps tie into what EDEN is doing. And we can pull that into the website. But yeah, so that's my general answer. Users. I think we need to just focus on users. And then, of course, we can refine some processes. So one of them that maybe might be too much to bite off, but dispute resolution, that's something that is a very difficult challenge, and we might need that. We want to ensure the integrity of our election. And we did have an individual, one of the things with this election, Luca, you mentioned that we don't need to do an induction that includes a video because it's redundant. Really, it's the election itself where people turn their video on. That's the civil protection. That's the important bit. If we have people who show up in an election and don't turn their camera on, yet participate, that's a blatant defiance of this civil protection. You could have 2 accounts. You vote on one, you didn't turn your camera on, and you vote on the other where you did. That's not this incident. I think it's a real person, but right.
It happened in my group, basically.
Okay.
The only thing I would say that the votes were 2-2, and he kind of provided third vote to me. And then the question was, does it count or not? And we basically said it doesn't really count, but let's still assume that it's probably more support on my side. This was kind of how they did
really. So it was Luca's second account.
It was my Sybil all along, yes. Of course.
Actually, so all of you bring up something interesting. You're all talking about ideas that require another election, essentially, or it requires more iteration of this process. At the base of that is the election. So you're not going to have another election unless you figure out how you're going to do the other election in 3 months. So in terms of importance of the base itself, how are you guys going to ensure that the next election is already being prepared for and not at the last minute? So this particular election was in jeopardy of not even occurring. Everything was done very, very late in the process. It's still essentially not complete. How do you guys ensure that in 3 months' time, the election will occur and that you're ready for that and that you're essentially already preparing for that to happen, the administrative process of running an election or of ensuring that an election occurs?
I think the first thing basically it was brought to our attention is that Fractal team basically wants to give the website up in like a 1 month time. So I guess we have a starting point. We need to find whoever will run this page. And probably go from there. So I don't have that much thought because election happens yesterday, but from my perspective, it's basically let's just collect whoever wants to run it. Let's talk about it and let's pick who let's we determine who will give our share of the money to them, and then let's see if it's enough. And if it's enough, that should just work.
It's not enough, so let's just start there and let's not waste a month figuring out if it's enough. You can run the numbers. It's not enough. The public bids were public, so you know what people are asking for. It's
Right.
not enough. So just fast forward that part. What are you going to do for the next election? Your share, even if all of you give all of your tokens,
Right. We can still use Pomelo, but we still will not be enough, basically. Yeah.
So
we should basically increase as well.
Part. So what are you going to do?
Let's increase the distribution disbursement rate as well. So
that was proposed by the last CDs. So you guys may choose or not to ratify it. The 15% was the top end. Even if all of that goes towards it, it's still not enough. So what are you going to do?
It might be enough. The 10%. You don't think so? The 10%?
Because I know what the previous people are charging. I know what the people who didn't win the bids were charging, which is even greater. It's not enough unless and the price of the token is not in your control.
Of course. Right. I think the price to run the next election
of the token needs to be much, much, much higher than it is right now for even all the tokens to be assigned to it. So it's not enough.
I would
waste a month figuring this out. It's not enough.
Right. The next election shouldn't cost as much as the one that just happened, though, for a couple of reasons. One, there was some scope in the one that just happened that included documentation and a debrief and some things that will be done, and they don't need to be done for the next one. So I think that we can drive the cost down. That's one thing.
Sure, so the price will be slightly down, but there's still going to be documentation required. There's a lot of glitches that occurred during this election. There will be some in the next election too.
That's different. So yeah, so we're talking. So I think part of the answer to this is why we set up these circles. So we have these persistent roles that exist outside of the four of us that were just elected. So it's not dependent on us to fulfill these roles. And so one of those roles was the vote.eden, and that is to run the election. The other one is tech.eden to update the code, which is still required. So this is where there's two pieces, I guess. And I suppose maybe, Eve, they're somewhat being combined because there were glitches that get solved from tech.eden. There's just someone to run the election. Moderate, be there, execute the on-chain commands, and call it a day. I think the cost of that will come down, but we can do an RFP. The other thing is we can just do an open
website.
RFP.
There's multiple components to this which weren't really even captured in this one.
Right. The website, so that these are all, I mean, there's lots of pieces. So in the end, I'm a fan of using our treasury. At the bottom line, I don't want to ask for funding from an outside source. ENF is the most obvious one we would look to. That's a question coming up. But I'm personally believe we need to use the funds we have, demonstrate value, then request more funding to sustain that cycle.
Basically, the question is, I mean, at the end of the day, Eden itself cannot survive on its own. So it's either it uses its treasury or it asks for more from ENF. So I guess here we kind of have like a question for ENF. What does it prefer? Does it prefer that the percentage stay the same, like how Dan was kind of designing it, or does ENF prefer that we just use our resources first and then ask for more?
I think that it's a flaw that Eden's been sitting on a massive treasury for a year and it never leveraged it, and it kept talking about asking for external funding when it was sitting on a large savings account, essentially. And the flaw was not being able to, and this is a very clear mirror replication of what occurred in EOS as well. The problem was not that it doesn't have access to finances. The problem is it didn't know how to get access to those finances, or it couldn't come to consensus on how to actually access what it has. And so from my viewpoint, this glitch in the system of having the ENF step in to fund elections this time around is not something that I'm prepared to do again. Eden has funds. Figure out how to run your own process to be able to access those funds, to be able to maintain yourself. Otherwise, this is doomed to fail. If you can't take care of your own self and you always require an external third party to take care of you, then something's wrong with the system.
Yeah.
Right. At the end, basically, what this means, I think, is that we just need to increase disbursement as much as basically we need. We basically should run the numbers, see how much we need, and how much of the percentage this will run to, and then just present this to the public and just do it. That will be my answer. I'm willing to go to 25, something like that. That's my thinking, just out of the box. But yeah.
Well, we got to use what we have. I mean, this is the whole. And if we don't, then how do we do it? Well, we can't just please ENF save us, right? No, we're big boys.
But
we
if
have
you do
to.
that part, please don't do that a week before the election, like occurred this
No,
time.
we need to do it now.
We shouldn't do it at all. I think I'm of the opinion it's use what we have, and before we start asking for more, right? And so here's a question from I assume from Michael from Bywire, and we we basically answered this, right? What happens when the treasury runs out? If ENF top up, what is the difference in the ENF paying now? I think I mean, I don't know. Do you want to expand on that?
Sure, there's a very clear difference. The treasury is for the process. Having the ENF having the ENF do the invoicing and the contracting for you is asking a third party to come and do the administrative work for you. It is very, very, very different. So right now, for the current election that occurred, we still don't even have the funds dispersed from the ENF to those who won the bids from within the CD process, because there's an actual process that needs to occur, an actual legal administrative process that needs to occur within the way that the ENF can disperse funds. And the way that the ENF disperse funds through what it is the admin grants account is very different than the process from the EOS grants accounts. And the treasury can benefit from obtaining funds from EOS grants, but having the ENF run your contracts and contract out vendors is a completely different, and it requires that administrative process. It is tedious, and I have no intention on running your contracts for you at all. We already have enough work on our plate to then come in and do your work for you, essentially. So it's night and day. It's apples to oranges. It's not at all the same.
Yep. Han, Dan,
Again,
Dan, go ahead.
Eden is sitting on the treasury and is asking for money while not using the treasury it has. That's a huge flaw.
I'm not sure if Han would like to speak. Feel free, of course, Han, if you'd like to jump in first. But so this is a very interesting conversation, and I'm looking forward to exploring this more. A couple of thoughts that come to mind. Two points, I suppose, is one, I think that the current Eden system that we have is likely over-engineered for what we need to do. So we might be able to trim some parts of it that aren't necessary. Like, for example, we had amazing elections in the pilot elections that Chris was a chief delegate in and Eve also participated in, where we didn't have all the smart contracts and we were still able to come to consensus, and we had all the videos that came out of it and all the amazing experiences and so forth. So I don't think that everything that we currently have is necessary. I think it's very helpful, but it might be something to reintroduce in a future term, and we could go with a slimmer approach for now. And that's also kind of evidenced by what we've been doing with the Eden Fractal and the Genesis Fractal. We have some basic smart contracts on the Eden Fractal that James Mart and Vlad from Consortium volunteered to build, and it'd be great to receive more funding to build that, but we currently have the smart contracts to be able to operate it at basically no cost right now. So there are ways to reach consensus and make this process work at much less expensive rates. And then I'd also say that I think it's also in the best interest of EOS and the ENF to focus on funding Eden and help Eden, because I didn't get a chance to answer the previous question about how Eden can provide as much value as possible to EOS, but I think that Eden is the most exciting application on EOS. I mean, there's a lot of exciting applications on EOS and I love it, but like Eden and this consensus process and this community building process and this DAO organization cooperation tool, it's the most advanced and most helpful cooperation and DAO tooling. And I'm very compelled and very excited by the value proposition of EOS as a DAO of DAOs. And I think that by focusing more on Eden, and even if Eden isn't able to fully be independent right now, like if you have a 10-year-old kid, then putting some more resources into helping them become independent can allow them to do really great things when they reach the age where they're able to do, where they're able to be more independent. So I think that there is value in reconsidering that approach to Eve, and thinking that if you do help Eden now, then Eden may be able to benefit EOS greatly in the long term by building a DAO of DAOs. It also reminds me of the beautiful metaphor that Chuck McDonald shared in the most recent chief delegate meeting, that Eden's like a tree and we're growing, and now we're being to make acorns and new trees and so forth. And that can really bring value to EOS as a place where DAOs can thrive and communities can really be empowered with EOS and this process.
So when you say that ENF can help Eden more, what do you mean by that? Because Eden is a process of determining who within that respective community is empowered to do something. So you have the process of selecting the who, you've got the process that can also be used to select the what, you've got funding available already. Why do you need the ENF to come and step in right now? What do you need the ENF to do? You already have everything you need, you're just not doing it.
I don't think that we necessarily need it. And as we were discussing before the call briefly, I think that the idea of having a respect makes organizations like truly independent, where funding can be very helpful, but it's really not necessary. I mean, you can look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin didn't have to raise funding. When you have a DAO that's empowered with their own respect and their own token by consensus, then that in itself can fuel the organization. But as you're saying before, like even with the 15%, we don't have enough, it seems like, to fund the maintenance of this election and the maintenance of the smart contracts and so forth. So that would be a place where I suppose, and I'm just thinking of this for the first time because I'm learning a lot of this as I go, but I suppose that's a place where if the ENF were able to help with that, as you did in this term, then that might provide more ability for the chief delegates and the delegates in the Eden community to thrive in the future. Because I mean, if we did say do 15% of our current funding, but then we had to use all of that funding to just make the next election work, then we wouldn't be able to use that funding to fund all the great things that we want. Like Chris has been talking about the website, great ideas. I've been talking about the Fractal, and Han and Luca have been sharing very exciting ideas too. So I'm just kind of brainstorming here, but that's a way that the ENF could potentially help by doing what you did this past term. And
but you have enough money, you're just not using it. You have enough money. At some point, Eden had $1.5 million almost. It just didn't use it. It didn't use any of it. The problem is not funding. The problem is how to access that funding or what to do with that funding. The problem is not funding. You've been sitting on a treasury that's been dwindling for 10 months, 12 months. The problem is not funding.
I would say the great way to consider, so you use the analogy of Chuck's, the oak tree, right? And we got this oak tree. Okay. We've got an oak tree and there's a bucket of water sitting above, a big bucket of water. And we poked a little, there's no other water. It's arid, it's in the desert, but there's a bucket of water there. We poked a little tiny hole and it's trickling down to the oak tree. It's not going to live. It needs more water. So what do? We please, ENF rain god, send us more rain. Or we just poke more holes in the bucket and use it to water the tree, or it dies. I mean, that if you want to take the analogy, that's where we're at. So then next question that we want to, so we're talking about this 15%, and then maybe not enough. We maybe need more. Can we use more? Are we allowed? So Felix has made a good point. He said the CDs can only move the treasury drawdown to 50% to honor the bylaw process. So I will leave this to an open question with my answer. The bylaws actually don't preclude drawing more. So bylaws are meant to be restrictive in nature. What can't you do? It's not only just what can you do, it's what can't you do. And yes, there's a line in there now that's been added, hasn't been ratified, in fact. We don't have to ratify the new bylaws to mention anything about drawdown. We can just, it doesn't break the rules, just change it to 25. There's nothing against the rules, actually, that would make that, it would set a precedent that active CDs can pull from the treasury whenever they want, but it could be done, in my view. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, for me, it's basically, it's either do or die, right? And so for me, it's either ENF keeps stopping us, which they say they don't want to do. So we should just respect that.
No,
And
hold on. Clarification. I did not say that the ENF would not top up Eden. You just made that up.
No. I mean, every election, top up every election.
I also did not say that. You just made that up. I said I'm not going to run your administrative processes for you. You have the tools. You've got the mechanisms. Run the mechanisms.
Right. So at the end of the day, there's not enough money. So if
there is enough money,
there is not enough money, right, that we can draw right now. Basically, well, we don't have like a rules that allow us to do it. We kind of need to take it. So this is what I see it, and we either run it. I mean, we either allow the process to be funded enough or not. This is all we have. So we can just talk about it again, like for 3 months, how it's not enough money, how it's all other people's fault, or what we should do or what we shouldn't do, or I don't know, we just do it and then see what happens, basically.
So I've been very vocal about this in the past as well. This concept of, especially when you're early at the onset, instead of asking for permission, begging for forgiveness, one of the problems that I see with DAOs in general, and very much being exemplified by Eden since its inception, is also this idea of, I kind of called it a cop-out. It's the DAO cop-out, which I see quite a lot of in this space. When people don't want to take a position or to stand out because they're afraid of what will happen if it fails, they essentially don't do anything instead because it's easier. And then instead of saying that the reason why they're not taking position or doing something is because they're afraid of the repercussions of what if it doesn't happen, they use because it's a DAO and we need consensus. And it's a DAO, and so we need to go back to everybody and always go back to everybody and always reach consensus on every single thing. I think that's a cop-out. And really what it is, and what we haven't seen with Eden yet, is anybody take a position, do something, and then deal with the ramifications afterwards. Essentially make a decision and then deal with it. And really that's what leaders have to do every day. They go out there and they take positions and they get hit. Yes, as leaders, one of your biggest jobs is to be a shield for everybody else behind you. Your job essentially is to be that shield, and then having to justify the decisions that you've made. And we haven't really seen that in Eden because everybody's kind of afraid to make those decisions because of what may or may not happen. So instead, it's easier to just not do very much and pass the buck along to the next person. What happens if the ENF doesn't fill out the treasury and you guys do empty the treasury? What will happen then? Then it would be on the people that drain the treasury. You'd have to live with those consequences.
Yeah, we go home, basically.
Well, are you guys going home already, effectively? Like that's I've been saying this for months. Well, but the shame is not doing anything and not having anything done, which has been the default now.
Yeah.
Right. So what's the worst that can happen? The same as right now.
What people are fearing of. That's
right now. So the difference would be, the result would likely be very similar to what it is right now. The difference is that instead of the non-action taking being on the system, now it would be on the individuals.
It's either slow draw out or we draw it fast and either achieve something or not, basically, and take responsibility for the ways.
Yeah, if it fails, it was Luca's fault. Now everybody's got a finger to point at, right? And that's scary.
Yeah. I'll give you my home address. No worries.
Not do it.
Right? So here's a question on this that I think it's really important to get this final clarification. It's what was the pretense of the original fund distribution to the Treasury, right? So if there was a precondition, it's like that those funds were given with the understanding it was a 5% drawdown. We're now we're gonna defy those initial understandings. This let's set that straight. Was there an understanding that it was always going to be, and it's not, and that you can clarify this ENF wording as well, because that's probably not accurate, right? So Eve, what do you think of this comment from Felix?
Well, let me just read. So please leave it on.
Yeah.
Don't bring it down. So did the ENF fund Eden, not knowing? So there's a negative there. The design of the treasury drawdown. I'm very well aware of everything as it relates to Eden. Perhaps maybe some things I'll argue within the code I might not be super aware, but yes, I'm very well aware of how Eden was formed. I'm probably one of the only or few individuals that actually follows Eden on a weekly basis, from a code point of view, from a meeting point of view, from all the chats and discussions point of view. I'm very well aware of how Eden was originally created, what the rules of the games were, and how those have evolved over the last couple of months, for sure. Okay. So did we fund Eden not knowing? No, we funded Eden knowing pretty much everything that I believe the majority of the people know.
I guess the question, I can rephrase it just to make it really clear. Does the network, doesn't even have to be Eden, does the network have an expectation that the drawdown was to be 5% and always 5%?
The expectation was for this experiment, this process, to be able to run and iterate and to see what is the result, what is the outcome of that, and then to iterate as frequently as possible so that we can play this experiment out as many times as possible.
There you go.
I've been saying this quite a lot. Like if you believe in the process, if you believe that the theory behind what powers this, then the goal is to run this as often as possible to be able to gather data to see whether or not the theory actually stands. What it did in the meantime, or what were the results of those experiments? Of course, it's important. Of course, you're not setting out to fail. But if there are failures along the way, that's less relevant, because you need to play it out. You need to gather more data to see how this will play out. And Eden hasn't really played out. I mean, in the theoretical sense, it hasn't played out in the way that the theory would suggest it would, because there's not enough members yet. It's too small. Plus, then it was abandoned at some point. It was never really launched fully. I mean, so to say that these were God-spoken words of it has to be this or else, great. Then if it has to be this, then it also had to be 10,000 members, or it also had to be this and this and this. We don't have these other things. And so we don't know whether or not the process will actually work out in that sense until we just run it more and more and more and more, which means, yes, it is likely that at some point somebody will make a decision. It will be a quote unquote bad decision. Is that saying that Eden is bad? Not necessarily. The process wasn't designed to run so that every single decision is an optimal one or is a quote unquote good one. It was designed so that over a long period of time, that process makes the system stronger, not the individual snapshot decision at a particular time.
Excellent. Yeah. Han or Dan, haven't heard from you guys in a while. Any thoughts on what you're hearing about this? Should we draw more from the treasury?
About before me asking that question, I just wanted to ask if, hearing the conversation so far, Eden began as a big experiment, right? And then ENF funded Eden with, back then with quite a big amount of money, although it was the USD, the amount in the USD term has dwindled a lot. I wanted to ask Eve that, it's still very early stage in the experiment, but what was your hope, your anticipation or expectation it could grow? Like what kind of role that it could play in the future if experiment was successful? You are just pour the water and see how it grows, or if you have any other expectation?
It's a bit of both. One is we don't know what this process will yield. And so just running it and seeing what happens. So that first one you mentioned of just kind of pouring water and seeing which tree ends up growing out of that, there's a big part of that. We don't know. We can guess. I've got ideas of what I think it could do, but I really don't know. And we haven't run it often enough, and we don't have enough people running in the process at this stage, I think, to really see. So even what we see right now, we're starting to see. once you pour 10,000 people in the process, it might be completely different. Right now, each of you are here because you won 2 rounds, or was there? No, there was only 2 rounds that got you here, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
2 rounds. Yeah.
The theory behind Eden, this idea that there's going to be non-incumbency at this stage is complete bullocks. I mean, the 4 of you are well-known individuals. Within the individuals that participated, how many of them actually wanted to participate? How many of them wanted to go to the second round? Well, if you remove a lot of people that already had mentioned they didn't want to go to the second round, and then of those individuals, then who ends up here right now, there is quite a lot of incumbency. It's quite obvious that you guys would have been selected, or within the pool of maybe 10 people that actually wanted to be here, 4 of you are here. I mean, it's way too small at this stage to know what that tree will look like. So maybe these are just saplings of ideas that will then die out, and that's okay. So let's just create more saplings. Let's figure out what this is going to be. Where I think this personally can go, I think there are multiple ways. I mean, the idea that Luca has been pushing, which is more of a WPS, and really it's just a means to distribute funds, I think that's a valid one. Maybe that's where, after you run tons of saplings and you've got all these different iterations and you start getting more people, maybe that's the vein in which this process goes. And that would be okay. I think that would be a win. I think that that'd be fine if that's what essentially the result, the process itself becomes an output for. That'd be fine. I also think that it could be a leadership type of role. And that's the one I personally think is will come out of this, but I really don't know. Because we already have these other funding buckets. So I do believe that part of this is to complement the other funding buckets and the other, let's say, stakeholder outreach mechanisms that we have within EOS. But that one that's very niche is that leadership one. Because we've got Pomelo. So this can come and help and amplify Pomelo. But if it's really just another Pomelo, I think there's a little bit too much overlap. So it's not to say that that's no good. I just don't think that will be the result when we run this experiment more. I think it will be more along the lines of leadership, similar to what you mentioned earlier, Han, of what role it can play in the ecosystem as a whole. I think that's the one that might carve out its niche more and come out of this process if we run it more frequently. But who knows? That's the point, is just we need to run it more and more and more. And in order to run it more and more and more, then you need to have those foundations of being able to run its own process and to take care of itself, which I think Eden still doesn't have.
Yep, well said. There's a few other comments. One from Randall, so the next election will cost more because Max and the team might not volunteer. So fair enough. I think what we need to see come out of this last election is a full debrief and breakdown of the true cost and what volunteers and what was needed. And then, of course, what's required to get us to the next election in terms of infrastructure and code upgrades. Those are all separate things that need to be considered. And then I just want to bring this up from Felix again, who is fairly vocal about the treasury piece and how much we can use, and has a strong opinion. And he basically saying that it sounds as if the ENF is indirectly hinting at tapping into the treasury, changing the protocol of the treasury distribution. I don't think you're hinting at it indirectly.
Indirectly, I'm directly saying Eden needs to figure out how to make this happen. And right now, your options are quite limited, as Luca hinted earlier. Realistically, there's very few options. The price of the token, the amount of tokens that Eden is sitting on, also gives very few options. And so there's no indirect hinting. I think you guys need to do what is required to get this organization to survive. How you do it, how you achieve that, which path you take to do that I don't want to intervene in. So I don't want the ENF, and this was brought up, I guess, last election a little bit. I'm not going to be inserting myself in your processes. So you guys figure out what you need to do, and that the ENF will support whatever that may be, whether it's the path that Luca's suggesting or the path that Chris is suggesting, or whichever process. You guys, that's the whole point, is you guys are placed here because of that process. It's up to you guys. Then the ENF will support. And I've also been very direct in saying that I follow these calls every week. I'm one of the few people that listens in all the time. and reads all of the channels. If at some point I see that something is malicious, I'll call it out. But so far in the last, I guess since the first election back in September, so I guess 10 months ago or so, I have not seen anything that the CDs have done publicly anyways, because I can only get access to what's recorded and live, of any malicious intent. So as long as there's no malicious intent, run the process. ENF will support that.
So I think maybe we can move, we talk a lot about, great back and forth here on funding and how do we actually move this thing forward. And I guess the question, what is this thing? What is the purpose? So NS James, obviously an important figure in the ENF and the EOS ecosystem at large. Great question. What is the ultimate purpose of Eden? There probably isn't a correct answer to this, but I'm curious to hear what the five of us feel about that. Dan, you want to get a chance to answer that first? What do you see as the ultimate purpose of Eden?
Sure. Yep. Thank you for the opportunity, Chris, and great conversation. And thank you, Nathan, for the question. So yeah, there's a lot to say here. So I very much like, I hear some typing, by the way, but I very much like the mission statement that's at the top of the website for Eden, where Eden is a community of people working to increase the independence and power of its community members. I think basically Eden is a community where everybody is aiming to help each other as much as possible, and also be helping EOS as we are building with EOS, and EOS is what is enabling Eden to thrive and so forth. And there's a huge symbiotic relationship. And then beyond just helping each other and helping EOS, I believe empowering all communities. I believe that all communities in the world can benefit from this process, and that Eden has a unique opportunity and a responsibility to provide this process and to educate about this process, to share how this process works, to provide tooling that enables communities to use this process as well, so that all communities will be empowered to reach consensus and come together and allocate funding and find leadership and be able to coordinate as cohesive communities, and help each other for all sorts of amazing things, like for helping EOS, but then also helping musicians and helping surfers and helping doctors and all these different things. That with this process, we can both help each other right now to become more independent, more powerful, help EOS to become more independent, more powerful, and create value for EOS, and then provide the tooling and the education so that everybody can experience what we've experienced with this process, where we get to know each other, we build these friendships, and we have these processes where we can coordinate like it was never before possible.
I'll just say one thing. It's a great answer, Dan. However, I would push back slightly. That is a extremely broad answer. So I think the question, what is the ultimate purpose? That's like, if we were to boil all that down into like a single phrase, I think that would be, and I'm not expecting you to, because it's difficult. It's a difficult answer. But the ultimate
I'll do it right now. I'll put in 2 words: empower
Great.
communities.
Excellent. That's a great answer. Okay. Han, Luca?
It is a process that gives legitimacy whom to represent the whole, but then at the moment, it is totally depending on ENF funding. So I personally think it is ultimately, it is, unless it is independent, it is not quite there to do anything in terms of defining its role in the whole broader EOS ecosystem. To me, if in an idealistic world, if Eden grows bigger, and then if Eden has some power on governance, I think it would mean a lot, because it gives the legitimacy in terms of whom to represent the whole ecosystem. But with its funding depending on ENF and not having independency, we'll have to define how we should go there. I mean, Eve has so much point. Yeah, just said what pops up in my mind. Yeah.
Right. I think it's basically an experiment in unique fund distribution. So what they like to say, like a split consensus. So the idea was mainly that people don't need to reach consensus on too many things. So let's minimize this, because that kind of it creates a lot of friction. Basically, we get like new CDs every 3 months. They need to get up to speed, and that always like take time and basically waste this time. And I also think it should be like fun in a way that it should be simple for people to understand what they're looking at. Because I don't know, now they're looking at weird debates or where we are going and so on. At this, which are needed. But what I'm saying is, for me, it should be like a tool. You come to this tool and you just run with it. You see if you can find something really great from, and it's a different source than ENF from my perspective, because ENF kind of draws its legitimacy from token holders directly. So whales kind of have like a big uh, big voice there, and they can kind of use this other process to get more voices in. I do believe that this process, like Eden, will probably be smaller, always like smaller compared to token holders. But at the same time, I do think it can be unique and it can achieve like things that whales would just not see, basically, because they will not get the info that it's needed or that it can be built like for lower price or something like that. Yeah, and basically just this pre-bureaucracy, just using the tool, jumping in, doing the stuff. And of course, at the end, it does need to survive, because otherwise, what's the point? If it just halt after this election or next one.
Eve, I feel like you had a comment for Luca.
Yeah. So Luca, you meant there's something you said. I guess just looking for clarification. You mentioned that, and I'm paraphrasing, so it's a question as to whether or not my understanding is correct. You mentioned that Eden won't be an equal or similar weight to the token holder weighted process.
Well, I don't know what future brings. It's just, this is my thinking right now, because the power is not here, and I'm fine with it.
Well,
I think we can.
I would say that it's not right now, for sure. There's no way that
Right.
the realistically 15 people that participate in this are
Right,
equal to
and so-
180 million tokens at this stage. No.
And my thinking is, if we want to prove that it should be, it needs to deliver some things, at least small things.
Well,
right?
It needs to have way more people as well, right? Imagine if you had, let's pick a number, 40,000 people that are participating in this, and then you ultimately have chief delegates and a head delegate coming out of this, and then you have, if by then the system is still roughly 10,000 per Edens, you get these 4 Edens, and then they come and select an Eden of Edens type of thing. Would that somehow be a valid counterbalance to token holders' weight? Well, perhaps, yes. Right? At that point, maybe it would not be arguable as to whether or not there is something behind that does bring about a certain weight to it inherently, regardless of number of tokens. I think it's silly to think that that is currently the case with the amount of people that participated. As I mentioned earlier, each of you only had to go through 2 rounds, and realistically, the first round, the majority of the people within your rounds didn't even want to proceed. And so you didn't really have to jump through many hoops to get here. Not to take away your success, there's just not enough people yet. So it has nothing to do with you guys. There's just not enough people yet. But if there were 7, 8 rounds or so, or 6 rounds per, and you had to, the resulting is 1 out of or multiple out of, and then you get your election terms of 3 months, what we haven't seen as well is CDs run for a subsequent election. And so it is a completely new slate. But what if it wasn't a completely new slate because some people wanted to continue their mandate and the system actually gave them that possibility? We'd see also very different results, I think, than we see right now. We're just not there yet. Now, going back to a little bit what Dan you mentioned and Han you mentioned, I think it's really important to have a vision. I think it's more so important with what we've seen, not just in EOS in general, having a means to be able to work towards that vision. And so if the idea is to have Eden in your communities and to have hundreds of Edens, and there's going to be 1 billion people running in Edens, maybe try to get more than 15 people participating in this one first is a good first step. If you can't, so if Eden doesn't survive in its current iteration, in one of the only iterations that does have access to funding, how are you envisioning that there's going to be billions of people using this, or hundreds of millions of people using this, and that every city or county is going to be using this, when we don't even have a way for the small select niche group right now to even be able to use it properly, because it's always at jeopardy of dying the next term? I mean, it's nice to have a vision, but that's MVP 500 or so. What's MVP 2? What's MVP 3? What's the very, very short near roadmap to ensure that this thing doesn't die so that you can maybe get to MVP 500? But what I've seen a lot is focusing on the where it needs to be, but actually not being pragmatic and great. How do we get there? What do we actually need to do right now so that it doesn't die, so that it can have a chance of getting to there? That's something that's been lacking in my opinion.
Go ahead, Dan.
Thanks, Chris, and yeah, thanks, Eve, for these thoughts. So there's also a bit of like whistling or screaming in the background. If anybody could please mute that. Yeah, I completely agree. So it's necessary to have the vision for the future to inspire people and to help people understand how this process can help in the future, and also to have something for us to work towards. But we need to start small, and we need to be pragmatic, and we need to take one step at a time. And our first step right now is proving this process and working together as a community to help Eden and to help EOS. And while we're doing that, a part of that is telling the story about how this can help everybody in general, because that can get people's minds thinking. People who are outside of EOS, who don't know anything about EOS or Eden, when we can tell the story and when we can make great videos and great content to explain how this process can empower people and invite people to join the Eden process, invite people to join the Fractal process, and we can speak with people, then people can start thinking, oh, I can use this to empower my local community of people who like to make art, or my local school board or whatever. And so we have to share that vision to help inspire people to think about how this can help. But first and foremost, we need to focus on building this for the Eden and EOS community to provide value and to grow the Eden and EOS community. And that's also something that we're doing with Eden Fractal, and then also something that we're doing with Jesse's proposal too, to attract people to join the Eden meetings and to understand how this can help people. And then also, while we're doing that, we can both be making great content, because the Eden process is a native video format. Like it's a consensus making process, but it's also a video creation process. So every time that we get in these calls and we share our thoughts and how we're inspired about how this will help and what we should do and so forth, we're getting recordings, and then we can use these recordings along with video editors like myself, and Felix was here, and many other people in the community make great content to share the message and to help inspire people and to come to join us and then help EOS, and then use that to prove how we can help all communities with this process. Sorry if that was a bit of a ramble.
So how many, in terms of membership growth, taking that approach right now, how has that affected the membership growth of Eden from your point of view?
Well, the membership growth of Eden hasn't been huge right now. So far, I think Chris mentioned some statistics recently that for the first election, we had, I think, 270 people or so in the community, and now we have something like 440 or 450. So it's growing quite slowly because that's been over 9 months or so. But also, each person
those are
that
members; those are not active members. So if we look at the active members, how has the process that you just described and the work that you're doing grown active membership?
So what we're doing with,
and is that what we take from that, because what we need is more active members, not just more numbers of people who don't participate.
The answer is it hasn't.
No. The answer is that it has.
Well, look at the election, though. The election is the objective measurement that we should be using, and that has not increased. It's objectively not increased.
So that's true, and I also completely agree that it's not just about the quantity, but it's about how much people are participating and the quality of participation and how much people are contributing to the community. And while we have the election with lower numbers than previously, the community's never been so engaged as it is now. I mean, now I'm meeting for Eden meetings like 4 or 5 times a week at least. Yeah,
that's your own circle though. You're for you it has, but you have to think outside of your field of view, broader global view. Is it really that much? I mean, maybe in your circle, yes, but I think you have to recognize that you're only seeing things from your own lens.
Yeah. So there's certainly a lot of people who are in the Eden community who aren't participating, but there is a group within the Eden community of I don't know, like 30, 40, 50 people, however many people who are very engaged and becoming much more engaged than ever. I mean, we're meeting every Wednesday for these Eden Fractal meetings, and everybody's participating and sharing their contributions. Some people are making presentations like myself, or building tools and putting more work into Eden than ever before. And then we're having usually an hour or 2 conversation after that. We're meeting for the Eden town halls and having 3-hour conversations every Sunday at 16 UTC. We're doing calls like these. Also, the Helios meetings that you've been hosting, a lot of times we've been discussing there. So it's not a huge amount of people, but the people who are engaged, we're more engaged than ever, and we're more coordinated than ever as well, especially with this fractal process as well.
Do you have a general idea of those, you mentioned 30, 40, 50 people, how many of them participated in percentage-wise in the current election with the intention of actually moving forward?
I don't know. I would say probably most. I mean, I suppose we could say that.
So the number that I got of people that participated in this current election that just happened yesterday, at least at the first level, was 70, give or take. So you're saying that roughly of those 70 people, 50 of them were the people that are participating, or as close to as 50 as possible were participating in your weekly process. And if I go back to the videos, there's about only 15, 18 people that had the intention of moving towards a second round, like that was their pitch and they had something. So those 15 essentially would be 100% of people that participate in your process. I have a question. Chris, Han, Luca, do you participate in Dan's process weekly?
I have been participating more to try to understand it. And I definitely want to give an answer at some point to NS James's original question, the purpose of Eden, because I think we are getting hung up on the very important nuance between Eden, the process, and Eden on Eos, this community, because those are not the same thing. And we have to create a distinguishing point there, because it is confusing.
The question is, there's something there though. So the work that Dan is doing, is there something there that we can corroborate the data that would indicate that what they've been doing actually does increase the membership participation for this iteration of Eden, where there's a direct correlation between what you're claiming, Dan, is essentially active increased membership and the strength and the quality of that participation. That's what you're saying. I'm just wondering whether or not the data corroborates that.
I mean,
yeah.
Just a question: Isn't this like Eden Fractal, right? Then.
Yep.
Okay, so I mean, it is a different process, so it doesn't overlap that much. I think. I don't know.
But does it incentivize people to participate in this version? And does it potentially open the doors for more people to want to have a reason, going back to NS James's question, to give a purpose for Eden and to give a reason why more people would participate, and you could be able to see a growth in participation through something like what is being held weekly? Do numbers?
Personally, I didn't see any of that. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I don't know. I just didn't see it. So.
Yeah. So the one thing that I'd like to go back to is that the 70 people who participated in this election all had to participate and be following very closely in order to be able to participate, because we had to change the submission process. I had to sign up to blocks rather than the actual interface. So I would say that like the 70 people who participated in Eden this election are people who are very committed and following very closely. And then
so those would be the people that participate in your weekly process. That's what you're saying. They participate weekly in your process, and they're very much engaged.
Well, there are people who would be very hopeful to participate in the process and that I'm reaching out to and that I'm encouraging to join. So far, we've had about 30 people who have participated in total, and we've had an average participation of about 16, 17, 18 people. And then to answer your question about like what's come from that, I mentioned before, like in terms of the quality of contributions, like personally, I'm making presentations every week, and these presentations are presentations I'm putting a lot of work into, and like sharing beautiful art and sharing what we're doing. I'm very excited to publish the presentation that I made yesterday in the Eden election, because I think that it really provides a lot of details and exciting information that helps answer these questions about what's happening. But like how I mentioned, I'm making presentations. People are just talking and building friendships and relationships. There are people who are coming to the Eden community who are from the Fractal community. It's also inspiring people like Jesse to build a networking group along with this that he's using with the ESBs and the swarms too. So there's lots of pieces that are coming into place. And then you look at what's already happened, as well as what's already happened in the Genesis Fractal group too. So you joined twice, Eve, but I've been joining every week for the past 19 weeks. Yesterday was the first one that I missed, so I could be at the Eden election. And there's a huge amount of progress. It hasn't been very much documented. James Marr put out a thread that documented some of it, and I've also been working on a blog post. But like people are building tooling, people are building statistical analyses, people are making videos about it. For the Eden Fractal, we have tooling that Vlad and James built that I mentioned before, that in the past with Eden, we never had this. We never had a decentralized grassroots kind of organic growth of all these things happening, because we didn't have these meetings happening frequently. So we were reliant upon the formerly Fractally team to build these tools. And when they didn't, we didn't know what to do. But now with the new process, with this Fractally process, and also what you were saying too, Luca, as Chuck has mentioned, like we don't have to call it Fractally process. It doesn't have to be a different process. It can be the Eden process. It can just be Eden can have different kinds of processes, or perhaps we might want to use this one more with the rankings. I think that it's more efficient that when you get into a room with 6, everybody wins. And rather than just picking one person to lead, everybody gets a different ranking, and it's incentivizing everybody to participate more. But yeah, it's already, just from looking at what's happening Genesis Fractally and what's happening in Eden Fractally, it's already providing tremendous benefits, like with like the code and the video and stuff, and it just hasn't been documented very well. But I documented a bit yesterday,
is
and it has been
providing
great.
value to people who aren't participating in a process, incentivizing them to participate now in the process? Because one of the things that we're lacking in Eden is more people coming in, just new people. So is the process incentivizing those within the system to participate? You seem to say yes. Is it incentivizing people outside of the process to come and start? That's one of the things we're lacking in Eden. Is that something that you're seeing on your side of things? And I guess that's a question for everybody here. How do you intend on increasing Eden participation, Eden membership, Eden participation? Where do you see our venues to be able to do that? So that instead of having 4 CDs, the next time around, we're going to have 6 CDs. And instead of having 18 people participate in the election, people who actually wanted to run and get here at this table, that we have maybe 200, 300 people with that mindset, because there was 1,000 or 2,000 people actually joining in at the rants. How do you guys envision getting there, or what do you think you're going to be able to contribute towards that in the next 3 months during your term?
I'll just answer briefly, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Chris and Han and Luca have to say about this. But so first off, with the Eden Fractal, there already have been people who have been joining, for example, from the Fractally process, or from the Genesis Fractally meetings, who were Eden community members or Eos community members, who are joining just because they're interested in the process. There's also the proposal from Jesse with the ESBs to bring people here and market it more. And then also, like Felix has spoken about, and I think is a huge value proposition of the Eden Fractal. It's like, it's the best onboarding experience that we can imagine for EOS in many ways. It's like you can come and you can meet a bunch of people, friendly people, speak to people face to face, and you can earn both the Eden respect and you can earn EOS. We can imagine if it's had more funding. Like the current Eden process has a considerable amount of funding. With Eden Fractal, we've only been using 500 EOS so far for the past week. Imagine if we had, rather than 100 EOS per week, 1,000 EOS per week, or 10,000 or something like that. Obviously, we're not there right now, and 100 EOS is good right now. But that's something that if people could join, and just from this meeting, you meet great people, you learn about EOS and you learn about Eden, and then you can also earn some EOS with some market value. Right now, people can earn like 15 EOS if they get ranked 6, or maybe a couple EOS if they get ranked 1. So they earn something, which is nice. And then also just help people see the vision about how this respect could be something that people could want, because this could be helpful for everybody.
So how do you envision, I guess, if you boil it down, your answer, how are you attracting new people? Not people from within this current community that are at arm's length already, because it's the same people. How about new people?
So
how do
far,
we get new people? Not new people as in they're already my neighbor, new people in the sense of they're in Fractal, they're in Eos. Those are the same people. How about new people?
So my plan, just to answer quickly, because I don't want to overspeak, and I want to hear what everybody thinks. But something that I'm really excited about, and something that you've inspired me very much about, Eve, with your idea of DAGs, decentralized autonomous gaming guilds, is I was thinking about DAMs, decentralized autonomous movie studios. And as I was saying before, this is a video creation process, the Eden process and the Fractal process. And every single election that I've participated in, as I mentioned, I've been sharing presentations, and I've also been recording the video from it, as have many people. We have all the videos from the Eden elections on IPFS. I've listened to many of them, and they've been super inspiring. And we have like this huge catalog of amazing content, of really inspiring content, but it's dense. Like, most people don't have time to listen to all these things. And so
it's amazing content to who?
It's amazing content to me because I've listened to it, and to many people who have been listening to it as well in our community. And so what we need to do—
answering the question. You keep talking about the same people.
Yes,
but
what I'm saying—
non-EOS people, or the people that aren't already within here, is that amazing content to them? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but it needs to be processed and needs to be refined. We need to make 5-minute videos from these 4-hour elections. We need to take the best parts where I or Chris or you or Han or Luca or whoever else in the community is like, this is amazing because this happened. Because that happens so much in these meetings, and it just gets lost in these 5-hour pieces of video. And so when we use this process to incentivize filmmakers to edit great videos, like videos spread with virality around the internet, people like Mr. Beast get hundreds of millions of views. We can create, like, as I mentioned, DAMs, like decentralized video creation movie studios that condense all this knowledge and inspire people to want to join this process. And that's one part. I mean, we're also, like, Jesse has a great idea with the swarms and the ESB. So there's many different angles. That's one angle that I'm really passionate about. I see all the potential that we have in these videos, and I'm a video creator myself, and I can see it so clearly how we'll make these videos, taking the best parts of each video, do highlights. Chuck was doing that a lot. I've been doing it quite a bit, and inspire and incentivize video creators to take the best parts of these videos to help bring more people to the community. Felix has also been doing a great job with that too. And I can go on and on, but I'll stop there for now. And thank you for the opportunity, and hope that made sense.
Okay, great back and forth. I think this question is a good one that kind of gets to exactly what Eve is getting at. Point me to something delivered by Eden CDs explicitly. And then the second question, point me to something delivered that's actually of greater value to the broader ecosystem and not just our own circle. Because I think there's definitely, we run the risk of being in our bubble. Humans do this. It's undeniable. We can't deny human nature that we get stuck in our own little circles, and that's fine. But at some point, we need to step back a bit, and goes right back to the question that Nathan James asked: what is the ultimate purpose of Eden? Right? So let's break it out. There's Eden, the process. It's a true democratic process, selecting leaders, representatives from within a community. You can define what a community is. You can sort of tweak the bits and pieces, but that's what the Eden process is. And now we are using that process. This is the first instantiation, which is the Eden on Eos Genesis community. So what is our ultimate goal as a community? I would argue my answer to that question is to grow this community. And by growing this community, we add value to the network. To me, it's right now, that's what I see our ultimate purpose is. And that can change. Ultimate purposes can change over time. This is an iterative thing. But for me, the most important mandate, it speaks to a lot of what Eve is saying. We don't have big growth. I think the value creation that I hear from Felix and yourself, Dan, I don't know if that's great value creation yet, because it's not creating external value that's drawing in more people. The moment we can create value that actually brings in new people because they're excited about what we're doing, and you're excited, there's no denial there, but we need to inspire other people to be as excited as you are. And I think we're doing a terrible job of that. We don't have a really clean description, a website that draws people in. I keep going back to that. And I think in 3 months, what are we going to try to achieve? Let's not be too crazy. Let's not be too lofty here. Let's just keep it simple. Lucas' comment, staying in our lane. Like, let's do that. Let's not worry about changing DPOS on EOS. And we hear these other outlandish ideas. Let's just deliver something. To Phoenix's point, what have we delivered? So let's deliver more users. We could, that may not be a product. It may not be, something that's so outlandish, but we can at least do that. And we could probably do it in the next 3 months.
The one thing that I heard that was concrete to address that so far was something that Lucas said at the very onset, which is trying to address UX, which is removing, for example, that first video part. That is something concrete, that is tangible, that could, we don't know if it will, but that has been highlighted as a pain point of people joining, because effectively it doesn't do anything. That civil resistance only comes in that first election, as Luke has been hammering.
I will also say it feels weird.
It's a cult. It's definitely cult-like. It's an odd process.
Yes, it's like induction into the cult. And for me, it wasn't. I mean, it was fine, of course, but it was kind of funny as well in a not perfect way. Let's say in that. So it wasn't like serious and this, and also basically it's kind of just go on the as somebody that gets introduced. You just go to this call, kind of look around, and just say yes. Basically, that's your experience, and it's not good. It's not good, especially if you're kind of like camera shy, if you're not good in English and so on. It's for me, it was very weird. And if it doesn't actually achieve things, I don't think they say while you meet people, well, do you really? You just kind of jump on the chat and say yes. So if we want to meet people, then we probably should ask them to join like a weekly community meeting or something like that, and then we can just use the witnesses to say, yeah, I saw this person on the meeting this one time. We think it's reasonable person. Let's do it. So yeah, that's one
that's concrete that aims to address the why maybe people aren't joining this. It's maybe not the only thing, but that's something concrete that could be tweaked.
I also think like notifications. I don't think they are perfect. There was quite a lot of people that didn't know. That there was also, of course, the question because on the site the timing wasn't right? So it said like that election will be, I don't know, like in 3 months or something like that, until the last week. This is also what we can solve with the bot. Basically, you can just get notifications. Hey, you didn't choose to participate. Will you participate? Yes or no? In this, they can the bot can basically invite you. So I also think that this experience should be kind of streamlined, so people don't need to constantly worry that they will just miss it or something like that. They can have like a helper, and then of course just making it easier, because as well Zoom is not the best platform for just jumping in and doing stuff. So for instance, just giving others permission to record is not easy. A lot of groups didn't share the permissions because whoever was the owner just didn't know how to do it. So it's all this stress, and then there is kind of like voting stress. We should probably extend that a bit. So these are the technical points that we can deliver and achieve in 3 months for sure. And I would say I kind of skip the marketing part because that's not my lane. So I will let that comment to others.
Fair enough. We've been going for a solid hour and a half. This has been an excellent conversation. I feel like we could go for another hour and a half, but we probably maybe shut it down. And I would propose that we don't make this the last interaction. two suggestions. We could do a wrap up. So we do maybe set the precedent that the first CDs do an intro meeting like this, a state of Eden, and a discussion with the ENF through Eve. We could do a midway summary, see where we're at, and then do a closing at the end of the term, or we could skip the midway and go right to the closing. I'm not sure. I think maybe a midway would be useful. Maybe once a month we try to do an hour call like this. What do you guys think? And just kind of keep this dialogue going. It's important, right? If anything from this, we want to make sure that the Eden community is working with the ENF. Like, this is meant to be a collaboration, of course. And I think that's been the tone here. It's like, what can we do to improve? How can we make this thing more substantial? How do we iterate? How do we make sure we actually can run an election? Like all these questions about treasury and budgets. These are all great ones. And then where do we go, right? Do we have Han's suggestion of the oversight board for the ENF? That might be something where once we've achieved a substantial quantity of community members, and then the other question of interlaying this Genesis community that's only English with the Korean community and the Chinese community, because that's the other big question, right? EOS is a global network. If Eden, quote unquote, this Eden community should be all of it, should be the Eden's community could have influence in the network. And so how do we answer that question? That's still, there's a lot of questions here I think we need to sort of wrestle with. And this is a great start to that. What do you guys think about that? Doing this again? All right, I'm seeing some nods.
Yes, that sounds great.
Okay. Any closing remarks? Do we anybody want to close it up? Eve, anything you want to? Any final parting words?
I'll close it with what I started with, which is Eden needs to be more disciplined, more organized. Kumbaya's nice. Kumbaya's not delivering results.
I think we can do that. I think we'll make a deliberate intention. One of mine is to make sure that at the end of every, hopefully weekly meeting, we haven't decided our cadence yet as a group, but I imagine we'll try to do something weekly, keep it short, keep it action oriented. And at the end of those meetings, there's a box that says action items. I'd like to see that populated each and every week with actions that we're going to take. And it's, of course, voluntary. We're not forcing and imposing work onto chief delegates, but it'd be nice if at least there's something that we can each do every week that might be a small push in the right direction of getting things done.
Sounds great.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks everybody so much. We look forward to this term, and thank you, Eve and Chris and Han and Luca and everybody in the Eden community.
Yes, and everyone in participating, asking all the questions. We didn't get to all of them. Apologies, we did our best, but we'll do this again. And let's keep Eden, keep this train moving forward, and have it to do whatever it can for EOS, right? That's what we're here for in the end. It's about the network. So thanks, everybody.
Cheers, everybody.
Sounds great. Thank you. Cheers.
Yes.